and that's impacted us to this day. Fortunately now, we have a resurgence of wanting to recover our memory.
We understand that the issue is the land, the issue is the earth. We cannot change the political system. We cannot change the economic system. We cannot change the social system until the people control the land, and then we take it out of the hands of that sick minority that chooses to pervert the meaning and the intention of humanity.
It was back our waters and our land. It's our future we're fighting for. I don't know.
Haya means water, the giver of life. The ranchers stole it from us. LADWP stole it from them. So what was life like before a white man showed up in this area? It's probably pretty tough, but it was like a paradise. Life was tough, but life was good. Had all the ancient irrigation systems all over. For thousands of years, there's evidence of humanity being here. The Numa, the people, they used water. They understood that water created life. The more water you spread out, the more life you had. The more food you had, the more game you had, the more places to live. My people, they knew that the water created life, and they see these creeks coming down the mountains, so they started spreading the water. 60 miles of ditches they dug off every creek that came off the Sierras. Tevezu, he was the head irrigator. He was elected to turn the waters on and off, to make more ditches. He went up high, surveyed everything out, decided where they wanted to put ditches. And the Tevezu's bravado was a big old mountain mahogany pole, 4 inches wide, 8 feet long. And it was tempered at one end. So it was almost like steel. It was like a big crowbar he just dug in the ground. And the rest of the workers had little digging sticks and baskets in hands. They learned that when they spread the water, the pupfish also bloomed. They would dry out one side and collect all the fish in their baskets, and then next year change it over. So they would rotate their water. And I always thought they learned that from the droughts that they had been through. More grasses grew, more animals were there, more of everything. And then they started living by them because they had fresh water right where they could spread out and live and be more sedentary. When I was a young kid, I was in a part of the desert a couple miles from here. I ran into an old ancient irrigation head gate, and I always wondered, where'd it come from? As I got older, I started hearing and reading reports that told me that 70% of the ditch system used today in the Bishop area were ancient irrigation systems. Then I started hearing about other systems, ancient irrigation systems, from Independence to Pine Creek, that every creek was used and spread water. It became an interest of mine, because this history I'd never learned before. And then I made it my hobby to go out and find these places, because they were never mapped, they were in nobody's memory. I asked some elders if they heard about them. Didn't know nothing about them. They were never taught about their history. "150 years ago, My people were forcefully taken from this land. The federal government said this is our land after they rounded them up in Fort Independence, forced them to march down to Fort Tejon. Almost 300 miles they went, bayonets to their backs. 200 people were murdered. I could feel the sorrow they felt 150 years ago. One lady had her baby. She had to find a mouse. She was so starving that she squeezed the blood out of it so the baby could live. We're lucky that some people hid in the mountains and stayed here, or we wouldn't even be here. The natives that were sent to the boarding schools had their history and culture beat out of them. The valley's names have changed from their waterways to the names of their mountains. In their schools, they taught us none of our history, none of our name places, none of our great successes like the irrigation systems. One of the first things they did was claim the water rights and said, those aren't yours anymore. And said, no, this is not your land anymore. And were willing to kill people. They had guns, we didn't. A lot of people don't want to hear about the truth. Forget it. But when you killed and murdered my people to create your own wealth, what did you create it on? You created it on blood. That I could go to church on Sunday and be forgiven for killing some people because they were less than me. That's a sick way of looking at the world, but it still is happening today. And people think they call that civilization. I call that murder.
So the significance of this site to the tribe, probably more so to my family because there was a massacre that took place here that my family was involved in. It's a story that my grandmother told me since I was a little girl that happened to her family back then, where a little girl came down from the fort and told them that she heard them talking up there. They heard them talking about coming down and killing off all these people camped there. So they moved camp that day, and that night they came in and massacred them, chased them into the lake and picked them off. And we've known about this all along and for generations. When the archaeologists came in here to prepare for construction, that's when they found the musket balls and all that.
When settlers moved into the area, they looked at this land and they saw a land that was open. They didn't see that our people were using it, and so they came in and they began to do what they did in other areas, and that was own land. The introduction of new people with different value systems from our people created a real crisis. So you couldn't just go through places, now you had to go around places. And that just didn't happen with our people. It happened with the animals. They were no longer able to move in the natural way because now we have an introduction of property. And that property was for land, and that property was also in terms of water. People started to see that you owned water. When the aqueduct came 50 years after that, we then had to readjust again because now there was a new landowner with different vision, different purpose. And that purpose then made us have to look and go, how can we survive in this new paradigm? We had lost some of our culture because of that sense of ownership of these natural resources.
That's right, Glenn. You know, you can't survive without water, and the cascade that made LA what it is today burst onto the scene 100 years ago. Chief engineer and aqueduct designer William Mulholland said, quote, "There it is, take it." He believed if you provide water, people will come, and they did. The water flow that happened a century ago helped spur an economy that today rivals those of many nations. We are the film and television capital of the world.
Since 1900s, they came in and decided that they were going to create a aqueduct, steal the water, take it all the way to LA, and they did. They dried up this valley. Even their own race, they took it from, lied to them, bought them out, sold them. They were supposed to do a big irrigation project in the valley to make us into a big farmland, the whole valley. The big dream for LA was to steal the water out of here. They actually stole it. They lied, cheated, and stole.
When Los Angeles entered, nobody else knew. It was really a secret entering into the valley, in that Mulholland and Fred Eaton came up. They saw the water resource that came because of the runoff from the Sierra Nevada, and they saw the Owens River, and they were able to in their minds vision that river flowing into LA and feeding Los Angeles and changing the environment down there so that they could have the metropolis that they always wanted. And they approached Lippincott, and Lippincott then was an agent of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, as well as a consultant to the city of Los Angeles. Of course, that was kept quiet. Fred Eaton had come up to the valley with Lippincott on a couple different visits, and so people began to see Lippincott and Eaton as being on the same page. Eaton began buying up property, buying up these water rights. Folks in the valley thought that that was for this Bureau of Reclamation project. Of course, Eaton and Reclamation weren't together. He was purchasing for himself with the intention of then selling all of that to the city of Los Angeles.
When DWP really got in here, they were after the water. They even sent couples up to buy land, saying, oh, we're going to buy this ranch, we're going to raise our family on it. But they were agents of LADWP, because they had their magic aqueduct thoughts. So when they started selling off all the ranches, the tribes were left with nothing. They had no place to stay, they had no food. There was also an article in the LA Times around like 1905. It said that we will eat what our grandfathers ate. So they tried to go back and collect the plants and the pine nuts and all that stuff, but they just couldn't because they had no place to live. The tribes weren't allowed to own any land or any Indian in the United States until 1924. We were considered wards of the state. They were like beggars on their own land.
LADWP came in and built the aqueduct and started draining the water from the lake. People had to move out again farther. People actually moved, because of the conflicts in the valley, people had moved even out to the coastos.
Now the ranching community was starting to dwindle. There wasn't enough water for their uses because LA wanted the uses for export. We are now seeing our environment fully change because areas that once had water, now it was being depleted. There was surface water diversions that were drying up places. Later on, LA began pumping water, which lowered groundwater tables, and it really impacted our culture in a heavy way because all of what we knew to survive wasn't there anymore. So our people then had to look at how do we live now in the shadow of the aqueduct? And really from that day forward, we've had a hard time adjusting because we no longer had the same type of environment we did because all of a sudden the environment itself was changing and transforming an area which was very lush into a much drier location. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, they really desired to see all the land and all the water in their hands. So they began a series of reports called the Indian Problem, and those reports were to be able to show that the Paiute people really shouldn't be living here in the Owens Valley. They depicted the people as really being poverty-stricken, that they lived in areas that were just rocky and really inhospitable. And yet if we were to look at those places today, you know, they're along creeks and, and they're along places that LA really desired to have. When Los Angeles then approached the United States government, the federal government said, no, the native people have lived here since time immemorial. They're not going to another place. And so instead of looking to transplant them to another area, let's create an exchange of land from that which you deem is unacceptable to land which would be more productive for the native people. That provided a land base for the Bishop, Big Pine, and Lone Pine reservations. One of the things that didn't occur in the land exchange was a transference of water rights. Towards the end of negotiations with the federal government, Los Angeles said, you know what, we can exchange land, but we can't exchange water. So let's deal with the land issue first, and in a future time, the water issue will be resolved. And of course, that agreement was in 1939, and I stand here in 2013, and the water rights issue has not been resolved to date.
The current situation of the tribe's water rights is they do have some water rights right now, and it's a contractual water right. Each reservation gets 4 acre-feet of water per year for irrigation purposes. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power delivers the irrigation water to the boundaries of the reservation. The water rights that the tribes don't have were attached to those lands that were traded. And in that land exchange, DWP was supposed to exchange their water rights for the United States water rights that they were holding on behalf of the tribe, but that didn't happen. And so we're not receiving any benefit from that water. In terms of the current water rights, we're not even getting all of that water either. They should have got 4 acre-feet per acre, which is over 2,000 acre-feet of water per year, and they got 18%. Normally they get roughly about 80% of their irrigation water, but to go from 80% of their entitlement to 18% is totally ridiculous. And it's affecting the reservation, it's affecting the water table, it's affecting the vegetation on the reservation. Honestly, it's gonna be a matter of the courts. I don't see negotiations working out. I know Bishop Tribe is involved in negotiations with DWP, but we've been involved with DWP in water rights negotiations since the early to mid-90s. And normally it's just string the tribes along so they don't raise too much fuss. If it's not gonna benefit them somehow, there's no motivation for them to settle the tribe's water rights. And as we've seen in all of these other projects, these mitigation projects that have not taken place in the Owens Valley that DWP agreed to, the Mono Lake decision, the work that's taking place down on the Dry Lake, the Lower Owens River project, those take lawsuits. Those were all done because LA was sued and they lost.
In some of my studies, I found out around 1856, a surveyor named Von Smith came to the area. He was marking out townships, surveying the whole valley. And he marked on his surveys, every time he ran across an ancient irrigation system, he put it on his little map. And it proved that they were there. If he hadn't done that, the courts would say, oh, that's just a myth, that's just a story. But it's official from the US government, he mapped them. And we found them today. We found maps. We went out into those areas and still found evidence of those ditches.
We walk the dry creek, now dry, but it's the irrigation ditch that traverses in a northeast direction toward Bishop and exactly toward Von Smith's Crossing. If we continue traversing down, I would likely run into the Von Schmidt point where it traverses the road.
I don't know if I want to go that far. It's pretty rough. This thing goes probably 300 yards that way. A ditch system that Von Smith seen in 1856. We might be the first people that ever came here and looked at it, realized what it was. Since then, or since at least 100 years probably. We've been all over, GPSing. Legally today, that might be binding in court. They were mapped, they weren't some figment of somebody's imagination like me. They were really there. We heard the description of how he called a type of soils, how much water, well irrigated. That's not just me he's talking about, but somebody else wrote about him. An official of the US government. Captain Davidson, when he first came into this valley looking for horse thieves, he talks about the engineering marvels that he's seen of these ancient ditch systems. He talks about how they were compared to his days of modern engineering. He was amazed. And then the DWP come out and wiped it out. They all not only wiped my history out, but they wiped history of everybody out. No evidence. It's not there. It's not documented. It's not there. Well, these ditch systems were documented by a U.S. government employee, Von Smith, 1856. And they're still there today, what he documented. They've been studied by many people. Never talked about those, studied. That was it. But today we're talking about it.
California appropriative water rights are water rights that the tribes currently are not receiving. California appropriative water rights are based on the theory of first in time, first in line. And the Paiute people were definitely here first. We were using the water first, so we have that right. There's over 60 networks of ditch systems here in the valley that the Paiute people were using. We know there's 60. We spent the last 4 years mapping those ditches, so not only do we have the anecdotal information, but we have actual data of where and locations of where those ditches are. The next step was figuring out how much water was actually flowing through those ditches. We had a modeler from UC Davis come out and he modeled one of those 60 ditch networks. And in that network that he modeled, there's over 400% of water flowing through there than what the tribes are currently receiving from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. So if you take that and you multiply it by all the other ditch networks, that's tens of thousands of acre feet of water every year that the tribes are not receiving and should be receiving. I can only imagine, you know, the landscape if we had that water here in the valley. So the next step that we're working on is getting the tribes together getting resources for a legal team to help us pursue the appropriative water rights. I mean, this could be a game changer for what this valley looks like and how our homelands, our tribal homelands, will ultimately look like.
So today commemorates 150 years since the people were captured and forcibly marched to Fort Tejon. Recognize that we are all descendants of the people who escaped. We're descendants of the people who survived. We're descendants of the people who maybe didn't survive. Maybe their children got away. And so the goal today is to think about that, remember that, and every time you think of this day, every year you think of this day, think about those people who died so that you could be here because they got away.
How can I take my grandson out here and tell him the history of our people and what happened here if there's nothing there but gravel? The lands, this is our ethnography. This is who we are. These are the stories we tell. Our stories are all about place. Our stories are taking place in our valley here, you know. The way it looks, the mountains, the lake, everything is a part of the story. You can't tell those stories, you know, without that being there. You got to do something. You can't just sit around and not. And I don't know, my mom told me once when I was young, she said I was always a real shy girl. And when I got older, that was the only thing I regretted was the things I could have spoke up about and done something about. And I didn't, and that's the only thing I hate about my past. And I was really shy when I was young, but I thought about what she said, and I said, that's true. So I'm gonna say exactly what I feel because I've never felt better because I feel that I am doing something.
I care about people. I care about my community. When you live here in the Owens Valley, when you have a people that have connected with the environment in very deep ways, water becomes that much more important. So when you have a loss of water, that loss of water then becomes a loss of community and a loss of people and a loss of all the things that those people value. And so because I care about and I love people, going into a field like water where I'm actively looking at ways to protect water quality, to ensure that there's enough water quantity in the area, we'll have healthier lives and we'll have a healthier community here on our reservation.
I really truly believe in my heart that someday this is going to be settled in the benefit of the tribes because it's the right thing. And that things usually are made right. It might take more than my lifetime for it to be made right. It might take divine intervention in a major way to be made right, but that it will be. So, and I think as long as we have hope, that's what keeps us going. Now I feel like crying because when I first started working, they're like, well, you know, tribal water rights could take 20 years or more to settle. I thought, you know, these people are crazy. It's never going to take us 20 years, you know, we're going to get a settlement. And I've been working for the Water Commission for 21 years now. You know, like my young life, you know, I started out working here and we still don't have a settlement or a healthy environment. So, but some tribes like Pyramid Lake, it took them 100 years to get their water back, but they did.
So I have the chorus of life outside of my house, not only the birds, but the frogs at night. So I've kind of used that practice of ancient irrigation system, spread the water and let it grow life. If I really got hungry, I'd go out there and just pull up the cattail shoots and I could eat them. But that's all part of watching what I've studied and using it, and had the opportunity to move some water on my land and let it create a little paradise where I get to grow up and get out every morning and watch the sun come up sometimes and watch the cattails. Beautiful little sight right there, and just look at them and the birds fly in and out of it. It's just a nice area. And I could imagine old Trevezu and those guys would enjoy seeing that little area and see what's out there. And be happy and smiling, going, all right. Somebody understands how we used to live, how we can live. If you don't know your past, you don't know where your future is. You need to stand up for your rights. Since the beginning of time that people lived here, they were not going to give up so easy.
See? Test. You won't fuck around on a beat like this. Alright? You just don't.
Hey, when I speak, it's high for the people. Higher overflow, the music flood your speakers. Beat by Odyssey, blue skyline citation. Now let me get back to exactly what we're facing. In our home known as the Owens River Valley, the biggest enemy is LADWP. That be the acronym for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, capital P for power. Seal our land and water, take it and sell it back to us at premium rates. Man, the elders will be mad at us. You better do something when water robbers at your door. The fight is the same as it's been since they came here, draining our land and polluting the air. It's time we stand up and say it stops right there. No more politicians in the pockets of conglomerates. No more rats infested with the snakes who be following. Mulholland Drive be a monument to murderers. Intimidation is the tactic they defer to us. Corruption obvious, pitting family members opposite. One paid to those in others' home, shit that's politics. And that's far from all of it. Lawsuits just a scholarship. Pick up a book or go to school, get a scholarship. I'm sick of it. All of this ignorant indifference. I speak for the fire when I say put an end to it. Spark a fire for the cold and the dark. Peace and war will pump a soul in my heart. And know they can't keep what they stole from the art. They love to see beef cause it throws us apart.
More fire for the people. And more fire for the people. More land for the people. And more culture for the people.
All my people, fuck the gospel.
Talk real subjects, rock underneath them, right below.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to our panel discussion. Can you all still hear me?
We can hear you, Terry.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to like reintroduce myself and use our language. So Manahu, that means hello. Inaniane Terry Red Owl. Numanu Payahupue Nukimetu means hello. My name is Terry Red Owl. I come from the land of the flowing water. We have Paul Hewitt, who is going to introduce himself and tell a little bit about his background, and then Mani Bengochia. Then we have Kendall Noah, who works for the Water Commission. He's going to be moderating the panel. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Paul, and then Monty, and then Kendall.
Thank you, Terry. Manahu, everybody. My name is Paul Hewitt. I'm a Big Pine Paiute tribal member. I'm elected on by my tribe to the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, Environmental Advisory Board, and the Housing Committee. That's for my tribe. I also like to kind of build some bridges and whatnot. So I sit on the Inyo County Water Commission and the vice president of the Big Pine Unified School District here in Big Pine, and also the chairman for the Firefighters Association. So I'm pretty well involved with the community and what goes on around here and in the environment. So thank you for having us, to the State Water Resource Control Board and all the attendees listening in and hearing our stories. So thank you.
Monty?
Pardon me for being a little slow. I'll just say, "Oh, in the middle." Means like, ask, how's my relatives doing? A greeting to my relatives. I had to do a bio. I didn't have to, but I did a bio maybe 2-3 months ago, and I'm going to try and just remember what I said. I introduced myself, or in my bio, as a doorman, and that what that means is I take care of some ceremonial ways, associated with a Sundance, which was in my belief was really initiated at way back by our Numu speaking people from some of my historical research, and just mostly about hearing things from different people. So it was interesting in the movie. I never I kind of haven't seen the Paya movie in a while, but there was the late John Trudell that was in it at the beginning of the movie, and I just thought that was interesting because it almost made me emotional because I've been kind of just reading about some of the things that he said during his life and some of the messages that he put out. And one basic one was that we are the earth, that as human beings that we hold the water, we hold many of the same mineral composition and elements that the earth has in her. So I just want to acknowledge that, and and also acknowledge Harry Williams, who was had a lot to do with the movie, and we think about his needs of where that he's not in, his health is not too good. Also acknowledge that another water rights and land and food activists, the Marlon Thompson, the late Marlon Thompson, one of my relatives, our relatives from up in Nevada, Northern Paiute, has gone on, and just kind of learned just pretty recently. So for all the people, all the relatives that have been, struggling for our basic rights to have life, just want to say, just give them that acknowledgement. I don't have much just to, I guess, other than just, say I take care of water, irrigate. Saturday we had our Tatsuano celebration. I was asked to to maybe take care of a blessing, so I did that in my simple way. With talking to the water, even though I didn't see any water, on the ground running, no springs or creeks where I went, but I seen the water in the clouds, and I seen the water in the leaves of the trees and bushes and grass and such. So that's how I communicate with the water. That's how I was taught by my older relatives.
Thank you for that, Monty.
Yeah.
Hello. Again, my name is Kendall Noah. I'm the communications specialist specialist and project coordinator for the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. Just a little disclaimer about me. I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. My ties to this land is I have two children who their mother is a Paiute from this area. We had actually met in Haskell Indian Nations University. I know you don't want to hear a lot about myself, you want to hear from the panelists. And so before we move on, I would just like to reiterate what Monty had said. I kindly ask that everyone keep one of the stars of the films and his family in their thoughts and prayers as he's preparing to leave this earth and go on his next journey. I told you a little bit about me going to school at Haskell Nations University, and my background is in American Indian Studies. But this is such an informative film that many of the general public didn't know even occurred. And me as myself, I didn't know this occurred, here in the Western states. And so I would like to direct my question to Terry, but by no means, if any of the panelists have anything to add, feel free to do so after she answers. Terry, what do you hope people will take away from this film?
Thank you for that, Kendall. That's a great question. For me, I just like to spread awareness that for many years, since the early 1900s, when the Los Angeles Aqueduct was first became operational, around about 1913, I believe it is. This is the area, our homelands is the area that has been supplying Los Angeles with the majority of its drinking water for many years. That has slowly changed as we have entered into these drought periods. And like I mentioned in the film, Los Angeles lost lawsuits and has had to put water out on Patsiata, which is known as the Owens Lake or the Owens Dry Lake, for dust mitigation. It was one point in time the largest source of PM10 and PM2.5 dust pollution in the United States. So, I want people to know that we're not hydrologically connected to Los Angeles, yet the water in our homeland, Payahunadu, supplies LA and has helped build Los Angeles to be this prosperous city that it is for the most part. The other thing that I really like for people to take away is to understand that irrigation wasn't invented by somebody else. We did irrigation. We were doing irrigation here forever, basically. That's how we look at the history. And, we were really good at it. As you saw in the film, there was a Taveju that went out and surveyed the land and decided where the water was going to be spread each year. And we rotated that water so that we could use the water as efficiently as possible to water the areas that needed to be greened. And one of our biggest, one of the main subsistence that we relied on was this tuber that came from this tall grass that we called taboose. And these were little tiny tubers that were about the size of a fingernail. And so we grew these by, the thousands of acres in order to help feed ourselves and to sustain ourselves. And so, Western scientific engineering mindset is that, there was, they have their engineering marvel and that was created, and Bureau of Reclamation came in and did all of these great projects to move water, but we were moving water efficiently and slowly across the land using our traditional practices. And the other thing is, it wasn't just the livelihoods of the ranchers and the farmers that were affected when Los Angeles came in and displaced the Paiutes from the farms and the ranches that they were working on, but it was also, our livelihoods as well. And there's even a bigger story that isn't even included in this film that talks about the land and the United States the city of Los Angeles's role in taking those lands out of control of the Paiute. Like, we only touched about the land exchange and the trade that happened that created the reservations that we're on right now. But, there's a whole bigger history, and we're working on telling that story in other presentations and eventually through a book that will come out, in the coming years, hopefully. But, the other thing is that I want people to take away is that, we're still here and we're still working towards getting a healthy homeland and to getting back some of that land and water so that we could do things such as having traditional food revitalization and housing for our people, and being good caretakers and stewards of the land.
Thank you for that, Terry. Monty, Paul, do you have anything that you want to add?
She covered a lot of that, so I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, Terry, I'm going to ask a little bit further. How has the local support been with the tribal efforts? Can you kind of elaborate on that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How has the local support for tribal efforts for reclaiming land and water, how has that been?
Yeah, so we've, as we tell our story through forums such as this, and people get to hear and understand our history, and like I mentioned, we have other presentations that we do that have more detailed information through like PowerPoint and stuff. People have been really wonderful about supporting our efforts and wanting to see things changed up here as far as how water is managed. And we have a lot of local support of wanting land returned back to the tribes, and a lot of support in the LA area, in the Los Angeles region, and throughout the state of California, and even nationally. And I've even had people in other countries participate in some of these screenings that we've done. And it just really, the amount of people that care and are concerned and that actually take action has been wonderful. And we see those efforts continue to grow. The more education that we can get out and getting people organized, it's been really, really good. And we're just kind of getting started. We've been doing that the last couple of years, and it's been fruitful.
Okay, thank you for that, Terry. Well, Paul, I have a question for you. What is your vision for Payanadu? What are your hopes for the land, water, and the people?
Thank you, Kendall. I have so many that could go so many places, but I care. A lot of my mentors, I've been actively involved. I became the tribal water, wastewater operator and irrigation operator for my tribe in 2013. And that's kind of when I started I don't like to call it political career, but it was when I started getting involved with the tribe and the environmental aspect. I got elected onto the Water Commission that year, Environmental Advisory Board. So I kind of hit the ground running full force, trying to catch up to Terry and Alan Baycock and Monty and the ones that really been, and kind of taking a lot of their visions and putting them into my own as well. So just seeing the people here struggling with water and how lack of water, to get water to certain places, there's certain streets that we can't get water, that are having to use domestic water, which and they finally come to realize, like, they're trying to conserve water up here. But it was hard for me because I had a hard time with the people going, well, why am I going to conserve water when LA is just taking it? And I mean, and finding an answer for that was extremely, extremely hard. But and at the same time, though, I said, but you got to look around here. We're affecting, because our groundwater is what we're pumping from, and the more we have to pump, because more people want to use water, the more it's going to damage our environment with the cone of depression in our surrounding areas, which we're having enough impacts of that. So, I like to see a lot of our water stay here, for the people, not just the Indian people, but for all the people. I hear so many different things about, like, everything's drying up. Big Pine gets picked on the most with the pumping. They have these fish hatcheries that which I love fish, don't get me wrong. But it's the over amount of pumping that they're doing, just to using that fish hatchery as an excuse to why they're pumping. These wells are exempt. So we're getting minimum 20,000 acre feet of water pumped from us, which is 6.5 billion gallons of water, which is a tremendous amount. So, but my vision for Payunadu is just to kind of see it go back to the old ways. When I watch Paya, I think like Tuveju, like, hearing Harry say, like, he was elected on, and when he did that, it was more than just a job. It was something that's going to provide to the people. And so I just want to see all the people benefit from this, especially us. We're stuck on, from all this plush land we had in the late 1800s to 279 acres for Big Pine Tribe. It's a pretty substantial hit to us, and I like to just see us gain a little bit more and get more involved as the indigenous people to help them understand of how to divert water or how to take water, just not a canal and it just goes straight down one way to one other way. Like, let's spread it. Let's get some, let's get some more life form. Our vegetation's dying. So I like to just see the Payuhunadu come back to the land of flowing water, where it was that way. The way it sounded is the way it would look. So I mean, that's my vision for where we can go. And for my kids, I'm the kids' kids, my grandkids' kids, I mean, my grandson has to play in a little tiny little thing with the irrigation valve, and that's when, if I could get the water over here or not. So I mean, it's a tough situation for a lot of people, and especially us up here, when all we hear is they want to take, that word take. And I think as us as growing up, our parents told, don't take something that's not yours. And you heard in the video, what was Mulholland's words when he opened the aqueduct, when he broke that wine or champagne bottle, all excited, there it is, take it. I mean, you're taking something that's not yours, and it's been that way for hundreds of years now. I mean, 100 years now, and it's not seeming like it wants to stop. And I'm trying to do whatever I can in my power to keep as much water as we can where the water comes from. So that's my answer for you there, Kendall. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, that's a great answer. And Paul, has there been any instances where like the groundwater was reduced in the pumping that they were getting, and there's like a reflux of kind of like a increase in the levels of groundwater? Has there been any instances like that?
Well, not really. I mean, even when we got a good runoff here, 2016, 17, or 17, 18, one of those two, we had a good, pretty good runoff year. And our groundwater table on the reservation, which is like 5 miles north of those exempt wells that pump 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we really didn't see too much of an increase in the groundwater table, which was surprising, Okay. So we have some wells that in our groundwater monitoring wells we have here, we have like 5 of them, and like 3 of them are 80 feet down. So I mean, you can understand that there's not, the recharge isn't really happening the way Big Pine is getting pumped. The hydraulic flow of the water normally would go to the river. Well, it's hanging a right going towards those pumps. It's messing up with the whole ecosystem and the whole environment, and the whole nature of flows drying up. A natural spring where my family came from is one of the bigger hits. But so we're definitely working on things and trying to coordinate with people and working. So we're definitely getting a lot more eyes on this situation. So
Has there been any instances where we have received allyship and that's been key into helping like any of the tribes in this area?
A little bit right now. Like Terry said, it feels new, but even though we've been working so hard to get where we are now, like doing these presentations and getting our, COVID hit, we were really in the full swing of things pre-COVID. I mean, we were doing a lot of outreach, a lot of these presentations, and we noticed that there's more eyes open. When the governor did his declaration of apologizing to the Indians, I really think that helped framework a lot more people in the state to want to try to look to the injustices that we have. So we are getting some more. We did a presentation from the tribe to the Civic Club here, which we've really never worked with the Civic Club before, I mean, so like little doors are opening and things are happening in that way, but it's a slow process. So but they are looking good.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Paul. So my next question, I'm going to direct to Monty. Monty, how's the next generation, like today's youth, tomorrow's leaders, how are they involved in the efforts of the Water Commission?
You said the next generation?
Yes.
With my job as a THPO, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer of Bishop Tribe. I'm working with like the Park Service, the United States Park Service in Yosemite, to get youth there to do black oak restoration in the lower elevations of Yosemite. Then next year, they want to, through a lady named Irene Vasquez, the Southern Miwok lady, to get restoration of the metals in Tuolumne, which is a higher elevation that's more Numu, more native, more Paiute speaking people, where it's closer to us, and so that's one way. And then the Water Commission for years has been using environmental educational camps to teach our youngsters about what we need to do. I'm working with the DQ University to develop curriculum, and using some of the people that work for my tribe that are environmental specialists and curriculum specialists, McKinsey, and the people from whether it be Dragons or anybody else that want to help build curriculum, so we could teach in the public schools as well as teach ourselves to be teachers. So that's kind of something that trying to engage the youngsters or the youth. We've been reviving our cultural stuff, events, our Tuva Nuga, our ceremonies, our Pine blessing ceremonies, and we just got done doing this Tatswano this past weekend, and seeing youngsters there, learning our Nayagui, our Indian ways that we've been doing, and sharing food. So hopefully, and keeping the Water Commission group, keeping them, not that they've been doing a good job, the staff, to get involved with the agricultural events that we've been doing. So I think that's all going to come to get our young people involved in FFA, Future Farmers of America, 4-H, and maybe even develop our own indigenous blend of tech, or traditional ecological knowledge, indigenous information, as I call it.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kendall, I'd like to add that, whenever we have the opportunity, whatever form it is, to educate our youth and to train them on, knowing their history and their language. We have a really good language program, and anytime that we put on, and not just we, like our organization, but all the tribes put on events, they always incorporate a language component to it. So helping our youth to remember and understand, their ties to the land. That's something we do with our environmental youth camps. We've been fortunate to be able to take groups of youth to participate in a variety of different activities. When Walking Water did their walks, it was, these walks over a period of 3 years. And when they were down in Los Angeles, we were fortunate enough to have the resources to bring a group of kids to come down and to interact with the Tongva people and with the people that from all over the world that came to participate in that walk, and to teach them. And, we're trying, when we do our youth events, I always like our environmental camps, I like to have a component where we have the kids get up and speak, because I believe that teaching our children not to fear public speaking and to be comfortable with public speaking helps prepare them to be advocates. But we're also teaching them about being stewards of the land. And so a lot of our activities, we always include some type of restoration aspect to it, so that we can get the kids outdoors and get them on the land and have them do something physically that makes a difference and helps improve Mother Earth, whether it's closing off trails from hikers that hike all over to get to the rock climbing areas, to invasive species control, weed control, water quality activities, helping to clean up our waterways. So that's one way. We're also working with UCLA to have some of our youth work with youth from Los Angeles to put on this youth conference, which will be our youth, the indigenous people from Los Angeles and students from UCLA putting on a conference, just for them. So there's a lot of things that we do with the youth, and we realize that, they're our future and they're our caretakers, going to be, caretakers of the land. So we do what we can to prepare them and to rise them up to be the leaders and the stewards that they are going to be. And it's not just indigenous youth. I do a lot of outreach to high schools and to colleges, and I'm talking to really young students, like 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old students, because there are going to be our decision makers and our caretakers as well. So it's important that it's not just the indigenous youth, but youth across the board.
Okay, Terry, thank you for that. Terry, we have a couple of questions from the Q&A, and I think this question right here just kind of highlights both of them. What can people do to support the tribes?
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to touch on, especially given the audience that we have, is that one of the issues that we've run into with respect to the first users water rights or the prior appropriation water rights is that you have to have this continuous uninterrupted use. And we don't necessarily have that, because in 1863, it was mentioned in the film, there was a forced march removal where over 900 Paiutes were forcibly marched by the United States Cavalry out of our homelands all the way down to Fort Tejon, which is in the Grapevine area, north of Los Angeles, south of Bakersfield. And when that happened, that enabled the farmers and the ranchers to move in and really take over those water bodies and those lands. And, when we came back, we started working for those farmers and ranchers, but we never were really able to take that land and that water back. And I know there's a lot of, scholars that recognize that indigenous water use should be considered a first use. But because we lack treaties in the state of California, there needs to be changes in those laws and that pertain to water rights within California. The other thing that people can do is understand, participate in events like this, reach out to decision makers when you understand what our issues are. If you go to our website, and I'll put it in the chat, I have a call to action document on there that tells you who to call, who to talk to. And, these are people within the United States Department of Interior, and tell them, we want you guys to work on behalf of the tribes and to help them get a water settlement that was, and their water rights and land as intended by Congress when they did the land exchange. And, talk to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Board of Commissioners, send them letters, emails, reach out to them, the mayor's office, the city council, and just share within the people that you interact with and you talk to our story and our need for help. And if you know of resources that could help us, we're still looking for, certain experts and always looking for lawyers to help us. We're very small reservations and tribes. We're not high resource tribes. We're not large gaming tribes that have a lot of money. We're really actually economically disadvantaged tribes and communities. So any kind of help that we could get, like I said, and go to our website, help advocate for us. Those are the things that people can do to help.
Terry, is there somewhere someone could donate to a legal fund? Is there like a separate a donation button or anything like that?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, oviwc.org, which I just put in the chat, there's a link there for PayPal. We do accept other forms of support as well.
Okay. Paul, do you have anything to add about how can people support the tribes?
Yeah, I could caveat off of Terry. I just like she said, we're not a big resource, and I feel like sometimes the bigger tribes have a little more action. There's more finance for legal stuff, but I think too is like they can give something back, and we want to give back more like just to our environment and not more like material things. And I think sometimes that's why it's a lot harder for, so any little support, I mean, like she said, reaching out, you know, however you feel in any way, you know, if you know someone, be like, hey, you know, these tribes might be, you want to take a look at it, reach out to Terry. You know, she's the executive director of the Water Commission, so she's in office pretty much all the time. So yeah, so anything like that, however any inkling somebody feels, you know, go with it. We can use as much help as we can. So thank you.
There's a question in the Q&A, and I want to ask Monty this. When historic water rights are hopefully restored to the Paiute tribe, how will it primarily be used?
Kendall, can you repeat the question?
Yes, when historic water rights are hopefully restored to the Paiute tribe, how will it primarily be used?
It has to be used on our ground to restore our as much as we can, our indigenous way of life, our foods, our medicines. And I realize, you know, with you know, it being said by I think Terry said the marvels of engineering of Mulholland, Lippincott, and you know, BOR, Bureau of Reclamation, and looking at you know, that really kind of built in or set up the 1872 General Mining Act, which I think has a lot to do with our climate problems, and looking at all the dam projects on the Snake River, the Columbia River, the San Joaquin River, et cetera, that you have this really, you have a breakdown, a catastrophic breakdown in that we're seeing happen. And Mr. Alan Savory, the founder of Holistic Resource Management, he termed it maybe desertification. And so we've been, you know, some of us have been learning from that. And, you know, since 1970s, and some of us have been a part of the struggle, or at least being active with the Pyramid Lake struggle that Terry mentioned took 100 years to, you know, for a settlement. And they're still working on getting that a little more clarified and a little more beneficial to them. But the Indians from Alcatraz occupation back in 1969, 70, they went there to support the Pyramid Lake. And so that's kind of how long or what the duration it's taken. And so I'm just hoping that, you know, with a settlement that we could hold back enough water, like Paul, I think Paul was saying, that make our valley, our country, our mountains a little more healthy, because the water has a lot to do with the health of ourselves or the environment. So that's what I want to see come out of it, that we have better, we have better nutrition, we have better health, and that we're able to share this blessings of good nutrition and good health with our neighbors, that all of us could eat good in this in our region, our bioregion.
Thank you for that, Monty. Well, that's all for my questions that I have for the panel discussion. I'm going to transition this over to Amanda Ford. And I think maybe she might have a couple of questions that she wants to ask you all.
Hey, thank you, Kendall. And thank you so much to the panelists, to Terry. This was really an informative and just very great discussion to listen to. Kendall, we want to bring you on to moderate more meetings for us. So if you're available, we'd love to have you on as a guest moderator anytime. It was so wonderful just watching that conversation unfold. So we do have a couple more questions that we have that are coming in, and we have one specifically from the State Water Board. So we were just, one of the questions that we have specifically are, what specifically can the state water boards do to help resolve these issues? So you do have a lot of agency folks on from Cali, PA, the water boards and other things. What would you like them to hear to help you mostly resolve these issues? And Terry, if you want to start, or Terry, Paul.
Yeah, so as I had mentioned earlier, like I don't know, what it would take, from the state water boards in order to look at changing some of the laws, with respect to first users' water rights, and how we can all like come together and I think maybe bringing us together to brainstorm and look at options for recognizing Indigenous people's water use and Indigenous people as the first users of water. Because, we do not have treaties. We don't have a treaty. There was unratified treaties in California that were, locked away by Congress. I think it was 18 unratified treaties. That didn't include us. We were really remote. The area that we lived in when California became a state in 1850, we were just barely starting to get people from outside of our community coming in. And when California became a state, we had, I think it was 2 years to assert rights to land and water. We didn't know about that. There was no way of us knowing about it. By the time people really start coming in, it was beyond that period. So what we could use from the state water boards is trying to figure out how to recognize those water rights. And it's going to really take an overhaul of the system, and it's going to upset a lot of ways of how we have been doing business and carrying and managing the water. I think also advocating and making ways for tribes to have more management and stewardship of land and water is something that the state can help us with. We would like to have decision-making authority in different arenas. One of the things that's happening in Los Angeles is they're working on this project called Operation Next, where they're going to source about 70% of their drinking water locally through recycling and stuff. And we totally support that 100%. But despite them having an increase of local water use, water available for their use, they're not looking at correlating that to a reduction in the amount of water that they're exporting from our homelands to Los Angeles. In fact, in their scoping documents, they talked about being able to do a water exchange with Metropolitan Water District. And to me, that puts up red flags that, okay, so you're going to maybe reduce your reliance on our water, but you're still going to take it and possibly sell it or exchange it to Metropolitan Water District. So having things in place that would help prevent that would be extremely helpful. When the Groundwater Sustainability Act came out a few years back, unbeknownst to the people here in the Valley, the Indian and the non-Indian community, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power worked on having an amendment written to that law that enabled their water, that they classify their water, so the water they're exporting from up here, to be exempt from the sustainability plan, and which really didn't make any sense. So, being mindful of those kinds of things that have, a big impact and a large effect on us. So, in all honesty, the groundwater sustainability plan doesn't help us here in the Valley because the biggest water user and water taker is exempt from that law. But, just having the open dialogue, and I know Jared Blumenfeld, he's been out to our homelands many times. He's got a good working knowledge of what's happening here. The governor, has the California Truth and Healing Council working, on the apology and trying to make things right. So making ways for us to put those tools into place. Felicia Marcus was another really good advocate when she was with state water boards. And, prior to that, the administrator for US EPA Region 9. She's, we brought her out here many times. So I think what would be a really good step is having the state bring all these people together, including us and other tribes, and sit down and really, work out some actionable items that could help.
Hey, thanks for that roadmap, Terry. We are noting that, and we do have folks on that are listening. So thank you for sharing that such detail. Paul or Monty, are there any things that you'd like to add that you? And
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add a little bit. I think that it's maybe even like letters of support to these agencies. I don't know if it's allowable or whatever, just or just working with, working with tribes and seeing their needs, because I'm pretty sure we're not the only tribe that has all this water coming from where they were originally from, and you only get so much of it, right? I mean, and it's not like we need it for anything else but like, ecological or irrigational purposes, for grazing. We could get some cattle hopefully and kind of live our real sovereign way, where we're not just going down the street to the store, where we can just kind of do it in our own land. So I mean, I think like Terry said, though, having the state come together with some of the tribes and figuring out like what are some of the needs that would be able to better help them, because learning from the state that we're all stakeholders. Anybody that's a resident of California, we have a stakeholder in the water. So, but we never see it. Like, we don't know, right? So I think that maybe like even letters to, DWP saying, hey, we're supporting the tribes, or you guys do anything for them. They're asking us if we can look into getting more water. Our first in time, first in line, like that doesn't seem to take effect in the state of California. I mean, we've been here forever and we got no action. We're the last on the list. So I think maybe just getting with us, sitting down and seeing what legally you all can do on some of the asks that we would be able to work from there, and it'd just be like the general question like everybody else, what can we do? I think that people have an idea of what to do. I think that if they just take that step forward and make that move, it would definitely be beneficial to, I mean, because we can't get any worse is what I'm saying. I mean, I hope I shouldn't say that, but I mean, we're getting very minimal amount of what we need. Like I said, we're 279 acres. We got people living with people with people. And it's just like, we need more land. We need more water. We need more water with the land. I mean, it's just that we're just always on the back burner. We'll look at it later, just like in the 39 land exchange agreement with the water, like they haven't looked at it yet. We'll need we'll need like 2/3 votes of the city of Los Angeles people. We don't, and so we need to get outreach. We need the support. So anything that the state feels that they could do, like write a letter asking, are you guys working with the tribes to better equip their needs with their growing communities and with their water and land and things like that, just to kind of, points it out like, oh, there is people watching. So that's all I have. Thank you all again. I think this is really wonderful. It's really a joy to my heart to know that the state is looking in and really being helpful. And this is a good start for hopefully something more to come for us as well. So thank you.
we hope so too. Well, thank you, Terry and Paul, for answering that. So Monty, we're going to have you wrap up this discussion point with any final thoughts or messages that you'd like to share, and then we're going to go on to the closing. So Monty, is there anything you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, just a few days ago, I got check out this diversion that takes water out of Levining Creek that should be flowing into Mono Lake. And I know Department of Water Resources Control Board made a ruling, I forget what year it was, but they're supposed to bring the level back to that lake, and it hasn't happened. And going back to around maybe 2004, after I learned it from a Mono Lake Indian up there, the late John Vendero Jr., how this diversion where it's at and how it goes into Grant Lake, via a tunnel, then across the highway 395 and into the Owens River watershed, and just how all like I mentioned earlier, how a lot of these water diversions are really impacting the environment of the world, not just here in the Owens Valley, and so to maybe look at upholding your decision to restore the lake, I think would be a good one. Another would be to look at the United Declaration United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and one of the provisions, I forget which one, what article, to allow the indigenous to have free, prior, informed consent over the environmental, cultural, heritage aspects of their communities, and then hopefully, how can we all work together to do away with the 1872 General Mining Act, which has been part of a lot of the destruction of the West, and all the going back to the 1840s, the California gold rush, and how that's impacted us till at the moment. So how can we deal with all these catastrophic, and then I could go into nuclear stuff too, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's just a couple points I just conclude with.
Well, thanks for bringing it back home to the to the United Nations Declaration for Rights of Indigenous People, because it really is multilateral, multi-agency. What you're doing down in Paiute country is affected globally, and how decisions are made for Indigenous people worldwide affects the Paiute too, and we're all pieces of that. And with that, I really want to thank all of our panelists, Terry, Mariad, for being the leader behind this, everyone behind the scenes that's making this happen. I do want to share my screen one last time, just to give you some information that's coming up. I'm going to look to the side here, so you'll get to see the profile of my face while I share my screen. And we are going to just share. So if you do have any questions for State Water Board regarding any tribal things or any ideas, please do email us at triballiaison@waterboards.ca.gov. We have a whole tribal affairs unit behind the scenes to interact with, to answer questions. We have a bunch of different programs that we're working on. Also check out the State Water Board's Tribal Affairs webpage. There's a lot of resources on that, who we're working with, how to get into consultation, and just a lot of great information. So check that out. And that's a bit.ly, so it's shortened, so it's bit.ly. And then also, if you haven't already, please register for the rest of the parts of the Data Science Symposium. The bit.ly there is on your screen, and there's a bunch of things to choose from moving on, so make sure that you're choosing the days that you're interested in. And with that, I just want to say thanks again. It has been such an honor to be here, to listen to Kendall moderate this, such esteemed guests, and hear the stories. And I hope that this was a great opportunity for the folks that are attending and participating too. So with that, I just want to say a sense of gratitude. Thank you. Have a great night and have a great weekend. Stay safe. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.